Good morning, distinguished guests and participants. A warm welcome to you all, and I'm honoured to be asked to give some introductory remarks. Over the next 2 days, you will hear from many distinguished speakers who have come to give us the benefit of their views. You can attend a wide range of panels where you can exchange views and learn more. I would like to thank our speakers for so generously giving of their time to contribute and to sharing their important views with us. I also thank the organisers and the sponsors of this event. As you've just heard, the last time this conference was held was in 2019. That was before the pandemic. I doubt if any of us then foresaw the multiplicity of the crises which now face international law and whose legal implications we have convened to discuss. Climate change, armed conflict, accountability for war crimes, security of all kinds, enforcement in maritime law, the international financial system, the international dispute resolution, and so on. International law is often dealing with emergencies. But it has been said with some force that the intensity of these present crises rival even the Cuban Missile Crisis. It seems as if progress away from conventional warfare that we thought we had made in the Cold War and thereafter has been reversed, and that we are back where we were in the first half of the 20th century. I want to use these introductory remarks to capture a realistic view of international law and to suggest that your work as international lawyers is vitally important. So what is the role of international law? What can it do? When I thought about this question, I went back to Brierley's Law of Nations. Brierley was in the army in the Great War, and he lived through both world wars. He wrote at a time when people were beginning to lose faith in international law and to regard international law as a bankrupt system. Brierley pointed out the dangers of too much weight being given to state sovereignty, and he questioned the doctrine of the fundamental rights of states. He was a founder member of the International Law Commission and deeply knowledgeable about international law, but he was not disillusioned about what international lawyers can do. In his Law of Nations, Brierley draws an analogy between a policeman and international law. He had in mind, I think, the traditional British bobby. He or she is respectful, helpful, jovial, well-informed, and effective. Significantly, he or she is not generally armed, except with a truncheon or its modern equivalent. International law is a bit like this. Problems arise in real time. There is no army to enforce it, and the means of enforcement is usually extremely limited. But as Professor Brierley said, even the policeman can still maintain order on the street. Why? Because of the strength and the quality of the body of law to support it. It is good law. Most people know what they should not do. They respect the law and are generally appropriately behaved. One mustn't, of course, take the analogy too far, but Brierley is saying that the difficulty of enforcing international law is not the only issue. The prior question is, how strong is international law in the first place? Is it good law? And how widely accepted is it? I do not think that he is denying that we must also have a means of enforcing international law as well as good law. As things stand, strong states can still do what they want to do by force and often with impunity. They can then evade justice for what they do. There is no army to enforce the law against them. Brierley's analogy, I suggest, is where this conference, made up of each of you, comes in. We must constantly rekindle our enthusiasm and work to develop and improve international law, and to improve our understanding and knowledge of it. We need to discuss together and strengthen it by our discussions. There is much at stake. We need the free world to cohere behind a strong system of international law, because democracy itself is now at stake. And I would like to repeat that. We need the free world to cohere behind a strong system of international law, because democracy itself is now at stake. A strong international law will command respect even by sovereign states. To achieve it, we must ensure that there are strong institutions, especially the International Court of Justice and the United Nations. We need to ensure that the law is clear and principled. We need to see that there are international tribunals which governments can use to resolve international disputes and more. And we need to support the work of the International Law Commission. We need to record state practice and observe when customary law emerges. We also need to recognize when international law is also realistic. The power to derogate should very rarely be necessary, as shown by the jurisprudence of the European Court of Human Rights during the pandemic. International law cannot force states not to pursue their own interests, but there is a chance that they will modify their behavior if two conditions are fulfilled. Firstly, that there is a strong international law which prevents them, and second, if justice follows if there is a heinous breach. That means that for serious breaches, there must be a forum with jurisdiction and an exception to state immunity. Without meaningful justice, the threat of and the use of force by states will not be overcome. Armed conflict will continue to cause human misery and worse. There will be an important debate at this conference about how to achieve appropriate enforcement mechanisms. But we should not despair. Remember that even the British bobby in the street does not carry the means to compel people in the street to obey the law. What makes people obey the law is the strength of the law itself and respect for the law. We need to ensure that there is in the future a culture of respect for international law. Now, this conference will provide an opportunity to look in detail at many aspects of international law. As you do so, I hope you will remember Professor Brierley's analogy with the unarmed British policeman. The point is that much depends on the strength and the quality of the law. You are all advising on the law, all writing about it. The importance of good advice is obvious. I should like to say this about international law scholarship. The scholarship which this country has produced in international law is one of its great assets. Moreover, the accumulation of views and information through scholarship acts as a reference point for the future. We need to build brick by brick. Churchill said about democracy that it was not perfect, but it's the best system we've got. The same is true of international law. One must be realistic about what can be achieved, but realism is not the same as pessimism. International law, as Brierley also said, is neither a myth on the one hand, nor a panacea on the other, but it is an institution for the building of a better international order. These points, I think, give special meaning to why we are at this conference. When you leave the event, I hope that you will leave refreshed and reinvigorated and take away a renewed sense of purpose about what you do in this field and the value and the importance of your work. This is a time for thinking out of the box. Last time, the conference coincided with the 10th anniversary of the creation of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, in succession to the Appellate Committee of the House of Lords. The Supreme Court's building is just next door to this, and I hope that you will take time in the margins to visit it. At the 2019 conference, we had a seminar for conference participants, chaired by the President of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, Lord Reid, and with a panel composed solely of justices. something which in my long judicial career I have never known before. Lord Lloyd-Jones and I produced a pamphlet, Public International Law in the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. That event was a first, and we thought and acted out of the box. We need to do that now in other ways. As Eleanor Roosevelt wrote, tomorrow is now, and international law needs to respond now. Thank you for listening to me, and enjoy the conference.